Do you remember that case, the JonBenet Ramsey murder case? First of all, I met a couple cops that were in the house that day at an International Chiefs of Police event. And they shared some information with me that I don't even know if I'm going to share here today. But I want to talk about an interview I just did with Court TV with regard to the JonBenet murder case. They have a new suspect. This guy's named Gary Oliva, or Oliva. Everyone pronounces it differently. And he's telling a buddy he went to high school with, he did it. He's saying, I did it right after it happened. He supposedly called his friend from high school and said, I did this terrible thing. I killed this little girl. And then supposedly it came out in the media. This is really big on Court TV. Vinnie Politan has a new show over on Court TV, and he did a 2-part series. I was invited to be on part 2 as a guest. And I got to tell you, I don't think he kills JonBenet Ramsey. And in this episode of In the Driver's Seat with me, Janine Driver, making you a badass in less than 9 minutes, I'm going to share with you, why do I think he's not the murderer? And I don't know if I'll tell you who I think it is. We'll find out.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to my podcast today, In the Driver's Seat with me, Janine Driver. I am so happy you're here.
Are you ready for one of the coolest podcasts on the web? Janine Driver is a badass. She's an expert on body language, persuasion, emotional intelligence, decision-making hack. 9-minute badass brain hacks for a happier life and stronger relationships.
Because we're now friends, and because I promise you we're going to have a ton of fun today, I'm wondering if you could do me a small favor. I'm wondering if you will promise me that you won't listen to this show just to be nice. You will only listen and follow if you see the value in it and you truly love my show, In the Driver's Seat. Sound fair enough?
This is In the Driver's Seat with Janine Driver.
This is In the Driver's Seat with me, Janine Driver. I'm so excited. 2025. It's a whole new thing. I always want to do a podcast. And I'm like, you know what? I want to record them live every Wednesday from 11:30 to 12 East Coast time. So thank you so much for being here. Let's dive in. So I get this call from Court TV. There's a changing of the guard with the producer. So it's a new producer. He doesn't know me, calls me, doesn't know my moxie and how I do things. How I like to do things is I compare current cases to past cases with regard to behavior. As a matter of fact, I want to get a show on Court TV doing this where you can actually see the video clips. Kind of like if you've ever watched that show back in the day, Lie to Me. It used to be on Fox. Now I think it's on Hulu or Netflix or one of these other channels. I'm trained by the real guy, Dr. Paul Ekman, one of my mentors along the way. And he was the instrumental. He was the go-to guy based on that show, Lie to Me. The guy's name is called Dr. Lightman, the character in the show, but it's based on Dr. Paul Ekman. So I was doing a 1-week class for ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, who I worked for at the time. And I hired the Ekman group for $35,000. They came in, I think they taught like a day or two. One of my mentors used to be part of the team, a guy named JJ Newberry. And after this was going to be their final event, and then they weren't going to be working together. I thought it was very interesting because Dr. Paul Ekman, towards the end of the event, he's showing me the difference between fear and surprise. I struggled with those because we have what are called microexpressions. They happen in less than a second, in the blink of an eye. And surprise and fear are very similar. The eyebrows go up in both and the mouth opens in both. So for me, I was really having a hard time spotting those in the moment in that fast split-second speed. And Dr. Ekman was showing me and gave me really great tips, not surprisingly, which was to focus on one area. We are going to talk about one of these microexpressions today. It's not fear and surprise. It's something else. It's called disgust. And I want to talk about how I saw it on Gary Oliva's face at a time that shouldn't have been there. If in fact he was the murderer in this particular part of the interview, we shouldn't have seen disgust. I share all of this information as we dive into the JonBenet murder case and talk about how it can impact you in your life if you see this one particular microexpression of disgust. What does it mean? What does it look like? If you're listening to me on your favorite podcast channel, thank you for being here. We also have a YouTube channel, Janine Driver, over on YouTube, if you want to see me making the microexpressions or showing the body language. And we also recycle this content over for social media. Let's lay it down, what happened here. Little background. This guy, Gary Oliva, 4 years after the murder, the police department investigates Gary, December 12th, 2000. He was arrested for possession of a weapon by a previous offender. He had a stun gun, and he had a photo of JonBenet Ramsey in his wallet and a poem he had written about her. If you back up, right after JonBenet was murdered, he wrote to a buddy of his named Michael Vale, a guy he went to high school with. And according to him, he gets this call and said, I killed this little girl. And he banged her head and it was a mistake. First of all, when we are looking for someone telling us the truth, we're looking for their normal behavior. Is there change in their baseline? And there's some details that this dude, Gary Oliva, is not sharing. He's like hypothetically guessing that don't match the actual scene of the crime. I know this, and you may know this too from just simply following it over the years. What does this have to do with you? If you can begin to spot this tiny little split-second micro-expression of disgust, then you know how someone's feeling about you, your idea, your product. You're going on a second date. I went on a first date the other night, and I knew damn right well, I'm like, yeah, this is not happening again. There is no second date coming. How? It doesn't matter what someone says. It matters on these micro expressions, and is their body language congruent with what the person is saying? Listen, I love words. I have a whole program, 38 words with hidden meaning that'll change your life. Words have amazing power with detecting deception. And way more important than words and body language is this congruency. Do the verbal and the nonverbal match up with what the person's saying? And we just didn't have it with Gary Oliva. So let's dive into the dicey stuff. He does an interview in CBS News, and he says he thinks that, maybe it could be a brother or a sibling. Well, JonBenet Ramsey had a brother, and some people had thought that it was him. Guess what? CBS News is getting sued because this guy went on and said that. I've never thought it was the brother, so no need to come and sue me. I never thought it was the brother. Never once, right out of the gate, in every interview, as it all went along, people had brought that up to me, and I said, no, in my professional opinion, it was not him. So CBS gets sued. When I'm being interviewed by Court TV, they say, hey, we can't mention the brother at all. And I'm like, yeah, well, I have nothing to say about the brother anyway. I analyze, of course, this CBS interview as prep work to go on Court TV. And he is asked, Gary Oliva is asked flat out, did you kill or harm JonBenet Ramsey? He says no. And then he looks into the camera. First, he says no to the interviewer. And then he looks into the camera and says, no, I didn't. Just to let you know, these answers are strong denials. It doesn't mean he didn't do it, but they are strong denials. The strongest denial when someone asks you a yes or no question, the strongest denial is a no. And when he then repeats it, no, I didn't, he doesn't say, no, I did not. If you normally use contractions, which it seems like Gary Oliva does, because other things he said, he used contractions. We want to see, even in a denial, we want to see that consistency, your baseline remain the same. Sometimes when people lie, they'll say, no, I did not. Truthful people convey, liars try to convince. This came right out of Joe Navarro's playbook. A retired FBI guy wrote a body language dictionary. Amazing. I have it. If I don't have it on the back of my shelf here, I should. And he wrote a quote for my book, You Can't Lie to Me. So he likes to say, and I've borrowed it from Joe, truthful people convey, liars try to convince. So right here, he's conveying. Granted, he does try to convince us when he looks at the camera, but he's an everyday guy. He doesn't, do you look at the reporter? Do you look at the camera? It's like when people go to court, they don't know, do you look at the judge, the jury? Do you look at the attorney who's asking the question? He says, no, I did not. So right now, and by the way, the first answer being no is a very strong denial. The no can come 3 sentences out. It would still be helpful as a denial. But that first question, did you cheat on me? Did you steal money that didn't belong to you? Did you use the work credit card for personal use? Are you really, if you're in sales, are you really just coming to get ideas from our company, and you're going to stay with the company you've been working with for 20 years? And they said, why would I do something like that? I'd have to be stupid to do something like that. Are you asking me if I'm a thief? What kind of person do you think I am? I'd have to be an idiot to do that. Just ask my friends. Ask anyone I've ever worked with. Ask all my clients. They'll tell you, I swear to God, I would never do something like that. These are all weak denials. They are people trying to convince you of something. I'm looking for a simple no. If I were to ask you, did you take heroin this morning? Are you on heroin right now? You would say, no. That's a weird question. You wouldn't say, why would you ask me something like that? Why do you want to know that? That's interesting. Ask my family. They'll tell you I don't do heroin. So think about, how would you respond to an absurd question? Do you have 16 kids? No. Why would you ask me that question? But you would first say no when I say, do you have 16 kids? Something absurd. So I weigh in on this case with the JonBenet Ramsey case with regard to Gary Oliva. So now I get to the nose. I'm like, okay. Next, did you tell your friend, is the next question on CBS. Did you tell your friend from high school that you killed her and that you were attracted to little girls? I think is what the question was. His eyes look up. Big time, big time. There are some detecting deception experts who will say immediately what comes next is the lie. That's odd behavior. Not just the eyes going up with neurolinguistic programming, which is grabbing visual information, where I'm looking at you, my eyes go up, I'm picturing something. That's not what this was. His whole chin went up, his whole head went up, and his eyes are rolling in the back of his head. This is a odd behavior. You don't see this a lot. What this indicates is deep thought, disdain, and mental searching. So this is really deep. So he's like disappearing. He's leaving the conversation. So this deep thought, disdain, and mental searching when someone's head goes way back like that. And then he does a one-sided shoulder shrug with his right shoulder. So now he's deep in thought. He's got disdain. He's mentally searching. And then he shows us a shoulder shrug. Now, I believe this man, Gary Oliva, is attracted to little girls. I think he's obsessed with JonBenet Ramsey. He's this poem and pictures of her and talks to her. And he talks as if she's still here with us. He does all this and he is unwilling to give us an answer here. And you can see it. You see it non-verbally before he avoids this question altogether. Now let's get over to Court TV. Now Court TV shows me all this footage, and something we didn't get a chance to talk about on Court TV that I'd love to share here in the driver's seat with me, Janine Driver, to make you a badass, is they're talking at one point, Gary Oliva and his friend from high school, Michael Vale, saying, hey, imagine if you ever met the father, John Ramsey. And oh my gosh, we see Gary Oliva's eyes go all over Kingdom Come. He goes up first, visualizing. So not his whole head, but just his eyes go up. He visualizes. Then he goes down right, which is emotional processing when our eyes go down right. When we look at eye movements, we're looking from the perspective of the person we're observing. So when I say down right, it's down their right. So down right is emotions. How I remember this is that, that expression, I was downright pissed. I was downright livid. So when someone's eyes go down right to their right, they're processing through emotions. Sidebar, I know what some of you are thinking. The video could be reversed and you're right. So if that's the case, then he's in internal dialogue, because down left is internal dialogue. Now, lefties can be different. Lefties can be opposite here, but one of two things is happening. He's either in deep emotion or he's in internal dialogue when he's looking down to what appears to be his down right. One of those two things. Then he goes down left. So it doesn't matter. So he's either emotional and then in internal dialogue because his eyes are going down right and then down left, or the reverse. And it doesn't matter. Either way, we know that this guy, this dude, Gary Oliva, is processing through emotions and he's having a conversation inside his head. And then it goes back down to his down right and then visual again, and then to his left ear, which is auditory processing through sounds. I just want you to think of all this insane eye movement that's happening. His eyes are going everywhere. Just talking about meeting the father. There's a lot of conflict here. He even talks about how much he would respect the father if he could ever meet him. And he was offering his condolences. And we see anger and disgust when talking about JonBenet Ramsey being dead. That's not where we should see it if he's the killer, right? Maybe, I guess, if I want to play devil's advocate, maybe if he has remorse. It's just not congruent enough throughout all of his behavior. His friend from high school is videotaping him and he's in on it. So he's like, hey, can you see me? You got the camera good? And he's literally pointing out all of this tech, like making sure it's being recorded. Why is this interesting? With regard to meeting the father, he says, I couldn't speak. I would look at the guy and he does a double palm up gesture. This palm up gesture is the number one body language move when people are being honest, open, and sincere. Now, some people know that this move is the number one move to look open, honest, sincere, your desire to connect with people, this open palm gesture. So some master manipulators will use it to manipulate us and influence us that they're telling the truth when they're not. I don't think this guy has the capability. He's got like all kinds of problems in his head there. The fact he does this when he's talking about meeting the father, I don't know what I would say. This is a big deal because when he is sharing other information about JonBenet and how she might have been killed, we're not seeing that gesture. So we're seeing a peek of what he looks like when he's telling the truth. I don't know what I would say. This is activating our brain, the viewer's part of the brain that activates in our brain sincerity. So when we see someone with this open palm gesture and they're talking to us, customer service, sales, and we see it as the observer, we're like, oh, this person is sincere. This person is willing to cooperate. It lets our guard down. A lot is happening with this open palm gesture that we don't see ever again with Gary Oliva when he's talking about the death of JonBenet Ramsey. I want to get to the most important part. Seems like I might have buried the lead here, which is disgust. And I did not get to talk about disgust, but disgust happens when the friend, he's talking about what could have happened to JonBenet. And his friend is saying, well, maybe someone broke in, someone wrote the letter first before they accidentally killed JonBenet. He's saying things, the friend from high school, that Gary Oliva had told him while he was in jail and wrote him a letter and verbally told him. He's just repeating it because he's trying to get it on camera for us to be like, I got you, guy, right? He's talking about JonBenet getting killed. And as soon as this part of the conversation starts, we see Gary Oliva wrinkle his nose and his upper lip comes slightly up. This is a microexpression of disgust. It happens less than a second. Disgust is repelling contaminated objects. So it's repelling contaminated objects. It's, I don't like you. I don't like your idea. I don't like your outfit. I'm a swearing girl. We'll be swearing on the show here, myself and my guests. I can tell immediately when someone doesn't like that I'm a swearing Christian girl, right? But if I swear and someone suddenly wrinkles their nose or their upper lip comes up, I'm like, ooh, okay. This person doesn't like me to swear. The fact this is unique, this can discuss when talking about what could have happened, how JonBenet could have been killed, to me indicates he's not happy that JonBenet is dead. Now, he's already told us that. He talks in current tense as if she's still alive, said she's beautiful. I'm so sorry something happened to her. The fact he naturally leaks disgust, I think, indicates he didn't do it because he doesn't leak fear. We started our podcast eyebrows up and straight across. What I didn't tell you is the mouth is open and taut. Like that. If you're watching me on YouTube, you can see it. We're surprised the mouth is open and relaxed. More of an oval versus engaging the jaw muscles in fear. Okay. Seeing the whites of our eyes, eyebrows go up and straight across. We're not seeing a tiny micro expression of fear. We're seeing it of disgust. He is not happy that someone else killed JonBenet Ramsey. He wishes she was still alive. So that to me was huge. If you spot these micro expressions, today we're talking about disgust. We talked about the open palm gesture indicating sincerity. It activates the part of the viewer's brain that says, hey, this person's going to cooperate, and it's associated with sincerity. They'll believe that we're more sincere. Use more open palm gestures. That's a tip for you, a hack for you to be a better badass, and spot these micro expressions. We'll talk about some of the other ones later. There's 7: happiness, sadness, fear, surprise, anger, contempt, and disgust. Today we talked about disgust, repelling contaminated object. What you're looking for when you see this little nose wrinkle or the upper lip coming up isn't congruent with something that is disgusting. So someone is talking about how much a price cost for a certain service or a product. You might see disgust because the price comes in and it's like 1.7 million and the person might leak disgust. They're telling you that price is out of their range or there's a problem here because this is repelling contaminated objects. If you ask someone to go on a second date or, hey, this was really fun, I hope we do it again. And they go, yeah, and their nose wrinkles or that upper lip comes up. You don't take down your Bumble or Hinge or Match or whatever, eHarmony or Christian Mingle, whatever site, Facebook dating now, there's Facebook dating. Don't take down your site just yet because that disgust is indicating there is a problem here. Last but not least, this is some bonus content here on In the Driver's Seat, which is this. With regard to the interview where Gary Oliva is answering questions of his friend being videotaped, he does a lot of start-stop sentences. And I did talk about this in Court TV. Start-stop sentences are when someone goes in one direction and they turn in another direction really quick. So we saw this and heard this with people like Jussie Smollett back in 2019, staged a hate crime over in Chicago. Chicago. Elizabeth Holmes did start-stop sentences back in 2022. Chris Watts, 2018, murdered his pregnant wife, Shanann, and his 2 young daughters, Celeste and Bella. Casey Anthony, going way old school, 2008, found guilty of lying to police. Many people thought she killed her daughter. Kaylee Anthony was not found guilty of doing that, even if you may believe that she did. Another one I weighed in on Court TV, a guy named Terry Sanderson sued Gwyneth Paltrow for a skiing accident years earlier and said he had all this brain injury, sued her for, I think it was $300K. And in court, she by the way, I'm not the biggest Gwyneth Paltrow fan, but man, I walked away saying she's telling the truth. I came in with a bias of not liking her, and not that I liked her at the end, but I certainly had respect for her. She took it all the way to court. She was straight. Her answers were congruent with someone telling the truth. And this guy, Terry Sanderson, these start-stop sentences, along with many other tells that he was lying. And of course, he was found to not win. He lost that lawsuit. This show is 9-minute brain hacks in the driver's seat with me, Janine Driver, to make you a badass.
Thanks for tuning in to In the Driver's Seat with Janine Driver. Use these insights to make your life easier and relationships stronger. Remember, you matter and belong, and you're not alone on this journey. If this is your first time in the driver's seat, Janine would like to give you a free gift. You're invited as her guest to join her live weekly online class to master the new body language so you can boost your relationships. Sign up now at www.janinedriver.com. That's janinedriver.com. Until next time, keep driving forward. Bye now.
I hope you learned some cool shit today to make your life easier and grow your relationships. And if you happen to be inspired to look at your world differently, I'm wondering if you'll recommend my show In the Driver's Seat with me, Janine Driver, to some of your friends, because that's exclusively how this show is growing. Thanks to you and people just like you, but only if you like the show. Sound good?